is titled, it's the wrap up of my September reads, and past month, I read 9 books, I believe. It was quite a slow month and a few book slumps as well. So moving on to the books, the first book I read was My Word Against His. This is a thriller, kind of like a domestic thriller, and it is about a mother and a son who is a single parent, and she works as a counselor at a school. From what I remember, she was a counselor at school, and she treats this other girl who kind of feel like a left out, even in her friend circle. She is also raised by a single mother, which we don't get a lot of insight into. And later, once she leaves school and everything, years later, she reaches out, and then the story starts from there. This was a really good story. Like, I loved the ending. The twist was amazing and everything. But at the same time, once I did finish the story, I put it aside. I couldn't, for the love of God, remember what the storyline was. So when I was putting together the book list and doing the writing for this video, I had to go back and do on Goodreads, like, what was this story, like, what did I read? As I didn't have a physical copy as well, I borrowed it from my library. So I did rate it 3 stars. The reason is the story was amazing as I was going on and reading about it, but at the same time, once I was done, I couldn't remember the story. So that's one of the reasons I rated it 3 stars. But if you do want to go ahead and give it a go, it's really nice. It's a really nice thriller. Like, it'll keep you on your toes and like, what's happening next. So that's My Words Against His, and I'll put a photo somewhere. Like, for all the ebooks and audiobooks or whatever I read this month, I'll be putting them all up somewhere in the video. And the second book I read this month is a series, the first book of a series, and that is Prison Healer. This book came highly recommended by one of my favorite booktubers, Sarah. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to get into it, and I was lucky enough to find an ebook. Like, for the whole series, I was lucky enough to find ebooks in my library. So as I mentioned before, this is a fantasy, romance and mystery kind of thing. Even though this book is based like enemies to lover, it's more like forbidden love. There's a lot of politics happening in the book, found family trope, and also basically the family you're born into. So the story was very slow because of, obviously, when you are reading a fantasy series, the first book mostly does happen to be world building. So yeah, there was a lot of world building, but the thing was, even though there was a lot of world building, this was one particular setup. Like, it was in, like, by the title you can see it's Prison Healer. So the setting was a prison, and the first book was based inside this prison. And when you get the physical book or even the ebook, you can see there's a really pretty map. Like, most of these fantasy books does carry maps, so it's a bit easier. Like, where am I? Oh, we are there. So it's really amazing. So, and the illustration was so pretty, and the ending towards like 90%, 90% of the ending, you're like, oh, that's the twist, like, that's what the book is about. And then 99% you're into, like, before the last, oh no, it was the last page, you get another twist. You're like, okay, like, it ends with a cliffhanger, which is amazing. And I was lucky enough to get the second book like the next day, and I was into it. But because of all the world building and how slow it was, and kind of repetition of the same thing in this closed off environment, I gave it a 3 star. As much as it got interesting towards like the latter part of the book, like the last 25% of the book, I still gave it 3 stars because it took me a while to get into the book at the beginning. And then moving on from our previous book, I read the second book of the fantasy series. It's called Gilded Cage. And yeah, so there was more world building in this book as well. As we now stepped out of the prison environment that was in the first book, we explore more of the kingdom or the world that Lynette Noni built in this world. So there was more politics which just went through my head, like I couldn't understand a lot of it. And this book stressed me out so much because, as I mentioned, our main characters are forbidden love, like enemy kingdoms and all that. Like I was stressing out. I'm like, what if she get caught? What if she get caught? Like I was so much more on this book to go, and there won't be this love story. Like I was holding on to that little subplot of a love story. I'm like, ugh, I want to get to know more, but if you get caught, we can't. So yeah, that it was stressing me out. So I was like, I need to go, I need to know. So I was like reading it really quickly, and also towards the end, like you can, like I do think about this character. You can feel the betrayal, like how it's not just the betrayal about among the couple, but also that found family trope, like how you feel betrayed, like when one person had this hidden secret. But also, like the first book, the second one also does end up on a cliffhanger. One thing I did recognize through this series was Lynette Noni was so good at the endings that she made sure she gave something throughout the book, but also at the ending she gave us a bigger crumb or something to like hang on to, like, okay, I'll see you in the next book. Like if you really want to know, you have to read the next book. So the endings was really good. She kept us wanting to know the story, or like wanting us to finish the story, but at the same time there was, like as I mentioned in the first book, it was a bit slow. Like it is, if you really are struggling with books or getting into books, I would suggest audiobooks. That's what I always do. While I do other activities, I do audiobooks. So I am listening to it unconsciously and I am halfway into the book. That way, by the time you're into the plot or you are attached to these characters, this plot line, you want to continue the book. So I would suggest, whenever you feel like, oh, I can't get into this book, or like you're putting it down like 10 times, if you're picking it up 5 times, just go for an audiobook if you can, so which will encourage you guys to keep going with the series or book or whatever it is. And the last book of this prison healer series is Blood Traitor, and I rated this book a 4.5 stars and the second book 4.75 because there was more world building and we got to know more characters and we got to explore our main characters as well in the second book. And in the third book, it was a 4.5 star for me. And again, more politics and also more political connections with other kingdoms and how they build these relationships, connections over time, like political connections and things like that. And also our main character Kiva, we understand more about her family, and also she get what she's craving from her family through the other main character, her love interest Jaren, like how his family is really there for each other, encouraging each other. So she craves that and she gets that from his side of the family, which is really sweet, like how they treated her. And aside from the main plot line, there was this one side character. She has been bugging me since book 1. I'm like, why is she even there? Like she's so annoying, so rude. Like can she just get, like, it's rude to say, but can she get kicked off or something like that? And later on in the third book, you understand why Lynette Noni gave a name and a face, or like whatever. She built up this character because she does play a part in the main plot by the third book, and you do get a twist from her as well. I'm like, huh, really? She is that? So it was really great. Like you get like a bonus twist from a side character, which is really interesting sometimes, as much as you get that mystery solved from the main plot, but also when you get that side plot twist, you're like, oh wow, like that's amazing. But at the end of the day, this series was amazing. Lynette Noni did a good job overall, putting this whole story together, building the world. Like it was such a beautiful world that she built. So as a series, I would say it's one of my 5-star series. Like I have a few series that I finished, like fantasy wise. I got into fantasy recently, but this is one of the fantasy series that I would love, and it's a 5-star for me. So if I do recommend, this would be one of those recommendations. I'll be like, if you want to get into fantasy, or like you want a quick read, like this is really good, because 3 books it's completed, and these books are not that big. Like it's 300-page books, so it's an easy read as well. So if you're looking to get into fantasy, or you want a quick short series where the series is completed, you want to know the story, not a lot of world building, like you still understand, like easy writing, the flow is easier to read, I would say Prison Healer by Lynette Noni is such a good one. And yeah, and the fifth book I read last month was None of This Is True. This is by Jewell, who is a famous thriller writer in the book community. Like, if you know, you should know, like, she is big in the writing world or book world. So this was one of her recent releases, and from the people I follow about books and everything, they all were like, oh, this is a really good read, like if you want like one quick read, you want to get through it, like this was a nicey cozy thriller. But like 10% into the book, like I was listening to audiobook of this one because I couldn't get the physical copy or ebook in time, so I did listen to the story. And 10% into listening to this story, one of the main characters, Josie, she was bothering and annoying me so much. Like, she's one of those characters, even through the audio or like the book, you can be like, oh, she just bothers you, like she's icky, she gives you an icky feeling. And I don't know, like that character, I was like, I want to know the story, but she's still bothering me. Like, so it was a struggle to get through this book because of this character. But at the same time, that's how Lisa wanted to portray this character, coming off as annoying, weird, icky, but at the same time, the other main character, Alex, she kept put up with it. I don't know why, she did put up with it. And as a reader, like, you know her behavior is weird, you can't say anything. So I think the other character was trying to be nice and like being like, yeah, you're weird, but I can't say anything really. And overall, Jewell did a great job at writing this. Like, it was an easy read. Like, she made sure you feel the characters. Like, as I said, by just listening to her and how she is, gave me this icky feeling. So, which is a great characteristic in a writer, like when you can feel the characters. So I think Jewell did a great job in making sure, as a reader, that you get what she's trying to say through the words. And the reason I gave this 3 stars was, one of the reasons was Josie, the main character, and also I got a feeling halfway through the book, like, oh, this is the plot line, like this is what's gonna happen. Even though the ending did take me by surprise, it wasn't a surprise given how weirdly or how these characters were portrayed. So as much as it was a nice thriller, I would say it's a 3-star for me. The 6th book I read this month is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. Emily Henry does have a good amount of romance books that is really famous and has good rating on Goodreads as well. I never wanted to get into it because of the hype. I was like, it's so hyped up, what if it disappoints me? But as I mentioned, I read a thriller before this and also fantasy. I wanted something light and easy, a quick read, not big story. So this was sorry this was a 200-page book, and it was a really quick read. Like, I finished it within one night. So that is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I'll put a photo up here for all the books. And this trope is one of my favorite tropes, like enemies to lovers, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Like, it was such a good enemies to lover. Their banter was good, like how they saw each other, how they viewed each other as a character, as a person, as work colleagues. Like, they respected each other as work colleagues, but at the same time, when it came to personal life, they did have the enemies to lover banter, the irritation and everything. So it was such a good read. Like, I loved it. I didn't think I would like her books, but I was so surprised. I really did like Book Lovers, and I really want to get a physical copy. Like, most of these books I read from the library, if they are ebooks or library books, whatever it is. If I do love a book, I want to get a physical copy, so I'm waiting for it to be on a good deal or something. So once I find a good deal, I'll always buy the physical copy so I can have it in my little collection. Yeah, so, and I rated this book 4 stars. I really don't want to give books 5 stars, as much as I love this story. If a 5-star book is when I do remember the character names, I think about them every time, like those are 5-star reads for me. So compared to how good of a story this was, I would say it's a deserving 4 star. And then my next read was a second book of a series, and I am doing a reading vlog for this. This is the Natural series by Lynn Barnes, and I love her as an author. I first discovered her through her Inheritance Game, which was such an amazing read for me. Like, that's one of my 5-star reads as well, because I just love the mystery aspect of books. And this one is a YA thriller, and in the second book we got to know more about the characters. And if you know, you know, this is a Criminal Minds-esque book, but for young adults, like based in teenagers' life. And the first half of the book was so slow, like it took me a while to get through it, but by the time we were into the second half, like 50% into the book, it did pick up and it got interesting. I gave this book 3 stars. The reason to give it 3 stars, as much as it is a nice book and a highly recommended series, is I did guess who the killer was. Okay, he was very suspicious and he was very annoying, and his behavior was off from the very beginning. And 70% into the book, I was like, yeah, you guys keep saying that these people are the killers, these people are the killers. No, but no, it was him. He was suspicious. Like, he got to do something with this. So I was like, well, if I could guess the ending, and I was like, great. But at the same time, then it's a 3-star book. Like, if I did guess the ending, it isn't a great book. Like, so no hate to Lynn Barnes, I love you, but it was a 3-star book for me. And the book's name is Killer Instinct. And the 8th book I read last month is Dance of Thieves. I got the physical copy. I got this a while back. It is a fantasy as well, and it is a duology. So the next book is, I'm supposed to read it this month, A Vow of Thieves. The covers are so pretty. This one's blue, the other one's red. Like, both of them are so pretty. The covers are really well done. The illustrations are amazing. And this book was also highly recommended by one of my favorite booktubers, Haley Pham. And a lot of my books does influenced by most of the booktubers I do read, or I'll do a Google search or a social media search and I come across books. I'll be like, oh, let me look it up on Goodreads, or like my favorite YouTubers will talk about it. I was like, oh, okay, so it's worth spending money. This was one of those books, and even though it's advertised as enemies to lovers, which is one of my favorite tropes, if we haven't established it by now. Enemies to lovers is one of my favorite tropes, but this is not enemies to lovers. This is more like forbidden love, a lot of politics, and especially even though all of them doesn't like to admit it, like their characters are so like, no, they are not like, they are not in touch with the emotions. There is a found family as to is like, if an outsider come in and like try to attack one of them, they'll become very defensive. So I would say, yes, there is found family aspect to it as well as real family. And one of the things that intrigued me so much in this book, like the main male character, the love interest, is Jez Ballinger. Yeah, Jez Ballinger. And they have a rich history. Like, they are the first kingdom before all these kingdoms were established in this world. And I love his story. Like, he told these stories to our main character. They were so good. Like, these tabs, all of them are about the Ballinger history, and that was one of the things that intrigued me to keep going in this book, because in every now and then between characters we'll get to know a bit about their history and how they came to be as one of the leading families in this world. Yeah, so that was one of the things that did intrigue me a lot. And moving on to the last book I read this month, this was such an awkward find. Like, I can't even remember like why I did choose this book. Like, I know why I chose it, but it was such a strange find, but I enjoyed it a lot. I was so happy to end last month on this book. Like, it was such a fun high note. So the last book I read was also a thriller. I rated this 4.5 stars. This book is 4.5. But moving on to the last book, I did rate it 4.75. It was a close 5, but I was like, maybe not. I thought about it after a couple of days. I was like, nah, it is a good 4.75, 4.5. and that book is Suddenly a Murder. It's still, I think it just got released, or it is going to be released here in Australia. They don't have a physical copy yet. I don't know how my library has the ebook version. They have the ebook version. So I was bored one day. I was looking for a book to read, and I was scrolling through. I was like, oh, let me look at the new releases. And there was this book called Suddenly a Murder. And the illustration was so pretty. Like, it gave the prep school girls, like three girls, three guys, like this, all this on the illustration cover of the book. I was like, oh, this looks interesting, let me read it. And when you first start the book, like the first chapter, you're like, okay, she's the killer, she did it, like she's the murderer, like who did it? But until the very end, you're like, oh, she did it? But how? Couldn't tell. Like, she didn't even, like this other character who did the murder, you couldn't even take hints from her, like the behavior wasn't odd or anything like that. Like, I was shocked. I had to read the page twice and be like, huh, who did it now? So that was a really great one. And I would say, if you want to read a quick read which is not too heavy, the writing is easier, the flowing of the wording and everything is really good, and like you can finish this book in one sitting, and it isn't that long as well. I would say read Suddenly a Murder is a really good. I felt like it was a cozy read. Like, it wasn't scary, or it was really nice. The setup was really pretty, where the setup is in an island, on an island, and they're just by themselves. This is a historic house based on one of the movies in the 70s, like black and white movies, which was filmed there. As the one couple of main characters just loved black and white old movies, that was one of the reasons they were going there for their school vacation. Yeah, I don't want to say a lot, but that's one of the books I would say. I feel like this might be hyped up in the book community, this might not, as it just got released. This will be a rare find. Like, whoever finds this book and does read it, it's gonna be amazing. Like, it's really sweet meat thriller. Like, I would suggest, if you can find even not a physical copy, like an ebook or a audiobook, just go for it. It is really worth it. It might deceive you how it starts off, like, yeah, it's teenagers, but no, it's really nice. So I would say, yeah, go for it. And yeah, so that was all of the 9 books I read in October. It was a really slow month. Normally I would have had at least 11-12 books, which I hope this month I do. I have a couple of really good books, and I need to do a few reading vlogs as well for some other series. But yeah, that was my wrap up for October. I hope you guys like it, and let me know if you guys have read any of these books. And yeah, like, comment, share, do all of the YouTube stuff you guys know how to do, and I'll see you next week. Bye.